Okay, testing to make sure everything is good to go. This is going to be a book wrap-up video in which I'm going to talk about 9 books that I have read, including one that is a reread that I've already written a review about, and basically my thoughts about that book have not changed even in the many years that it's been since I've read it, but we'll get into that in the scope of this video in addition to the other books that I've been able to pick up over the past several months. So let's get into it. Hi everyone, my name is Rose, also known as TA Summers. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a wrap-up video of all the books that I have read in the past several months. My reading pace has basically kind of slowed significantly, basically due to like a number of the updates that I've had in the last video. If you have not seen that, you can watch the previous video to this one in terms of my updates and also my book haul for the previous month. But that kind of sums up everything that I've been doing in terms of why I haven't been reading as much. But I did read a total of, I believe, 10 books total over the past several months, and I'm going to go through in some of them will be more detailed than others because one of them is a reread and the other ones have been new to me in terms of me being able to pick them up, and I want to give them due time in this respective video to be able to walk through them. So since this is going to be a longer video, I'm going to have timestamps down below in case you want to hear my thoughts for each of these books, and we're just going to dive into it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and begin. First up, the last book that I think that I left off of was talking about 3 books that I had picked up, but I don't think I've reviewed them for the channel quite yet. One of them was Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman, which I read on audiobook, and that was a very interesting, very interesting book. It's the first in the series. It's considered an adult fantasy, kind of like RPG-ish type lit. That was very fun to be able to read. I gave this particular book, I think, no, it was 3 out of 5 stars. So, Dungeon Crawler Carl, for the first book in that respective series, I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I read the audiobook, which was narrated wonderfully by Jeff Hayes, who did a phenomenal job of being able to tell the story about a guy named Carl who is basically thrown into this dystopic universe in which his life is suddenly upended. He goes outside to get his cat, and then basically the whole world collapses and he's brought into this other world where he's basically fighting for his life and playing this prolonged RPG game where it's kind of like this a combination of being able to forge items and do different things to be able to navigate this other world where he's at the behest of these aliens that have taken over Earth and basically submit the humans and the survivors of the catastrophe that happens to this respective game for the entertainment of all these unseen viewers and aliens and stuff like that that are watching the humans try to survive, and other creatures as well. And it's very interesting in terms of what this narrative chooses to do with Carl in terms of putting him in the worst case situation of trying to survive. He's used to gaming and he sees different things, but it's basically a very interesting way of combining humor and gaming, and it for my gamer heart, it just basically hit all the different buttons in terms of things that I wanted from it. But in terms of and also he has a cat named Princess Donut that is his ex-girlfriend's cat that he ends up being able to take care of. And like Princess Donut, or Donut as he calls her, is a talking cat in this other universe in terms of things, and she is exactly what you would expect a talking cat to be. Very very, very interesting in terms of characterization. I love Donut. I love Donut so much. But I really enjoyed the dynamic between Carl and Donut, and being able to see the different levels and the different dynamics of this respective world. It was interesting to be able to see. The one caveat that I will say that probably impacted me the most in this respective novel was the pacing, which it feels, for a novel that talks about gaming and basically undertaking these missions and going through different worlds and levels and things like that, you can feel the grind, even as entertaining as it is in terms of the dynamic of this particular story. So I felt like the pacing could have been better for Dungeon Crawler Carl, but I did enjoy the respective journey of it overall, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. So that is Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. It is the first in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, and I would highly, highly recommend for those of you who can read audiobooks to read this in audiobook form, because it is just a delight to be able to hear the dynamics and like the way that Jeff Hayes gives the performances for each of the characters, including Carl and Donut as well. It was a joy to be able to listen to, and I'm glad I picked it up. I do plan on picking up more in this respective series in the near future. I think the other aspect of Dungeon Crawler Carl that I would say like took away from it a little bit was also some familiar gaming stereotypes that I was like, it could have been done a little bit better, but like, you know, I think that was minor compared to really how much enjoyment I got from the overarching experience of the audiobook and the book itself, in terms of being able to follow the characters and being able to follow them on their journey, and the stopping point of basically being able to segue into the next book for this respective series, to be able to want to follow Carl and Donut and the rest of the characters in terms of being able to see where they go from here. But overall, I thought it was a wonderful experience. So the next book that I read, which I feel slightly bad that I have to talk about this respective book, because it was not an enjoyable experience for me, and this is probably one of the few, if not the only, 1-star reads that I have to cover in this respective video. I was doing research in terms of being able to pick up adult and new adult bully romances in terms of things, and I think I talked about that on the channel before in terms of like picking up certain books like Bully by Devney Perry, as well as some other books that I was able to pick up. This particular book that I'm going to highlight is one that I found on Kindle Unlimited. Wanted to try it, see how it would play out. It's from an author that is new to me, and I feel like upon the experience of reading, I feel like I've been trolled. Like it's a book that I can't tell if this is the very first book that this author has attempted to write, so I feel bad about critiquing it the way that I'm going to talk about it in this respective video, but I feel like I have to talk about the fact that this feels like an incomplete story, and it was not an enjoyable experience for me. This is The Bully I Hate by Gabrielle Melo. This is a very quick read, and it is 81 pages. It's on Kindle Unlimited the last time that I checked. I don't know if it's still on Kindle Unlimited, but it's not a book that I would recommend in terms of things, because it feels like the premise of it has a promise that it never completely fulfills in the spectrum of the story. It was recommended as a dark high school bully romance, and for the 81 pages that it had, it was very difficult to be able to read through and push through. It is threadbare, it is meandering, it is repetitious, it is not dark at all. You're following the perspectives of two characters here, Dale and Junior. Junior is a 21-year-old high school student. Okay, so first of all, I'm not saying that a 21-year-old cannot be in high school. Please do not think that I'm saying that at all in terms of things, because, like, you know, that there are people who have different experiences with respect to, like, where they are in their schooling journeys in terms of things in certain areas in which they are educated. So my first thought with this was like, okay, I'm gonna see where this goes in terms of things, but it wasn't the ages for this that like threw me off at first. I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it grace for like where it starts. But there's two perspectives in here. There is Dale and Junior. Junior is 21 and Dale is 18, and Junior, you can tell, he has trouble with being able to adapt to his school environment, and he's bullied and harassed and things like that. And I was trying to suspend my disbelief in that. Dale is the actual bully, and he's 18. He picks on Junior, and the two of them have this caustic relationship in terms of things. Junior is basically like still living with his parents and things like that. And I wondered in terms of like how the dynamic of this worked with Dale beating Junior up and the reasons that Dale gave for beating Junior up. It feels very threadbare, and it feels like, you know, the only reason why Dale is beating him up just to demand that Junior tell him his name, and that's basically the conflict. Like that, it's not a deep conflict. It's not necessarily giving you anything in terms of the development of the characters. It's just very threadbare in terms of how it chooses to depict the antagonism between these two characters. And then you realize that the only reason why Dale is also beating him up is because Dale secretly likes Junior, and Junior likes Dale back, and it just feels like this really contrived situation in terms of where it forces the characters to be together and doesn't really expand upon the conflict or the characterization of these two characters very well. I feel like this was a book that was not ready for prime time. It was hard to read. It was hard to push through. When I was finally done, I was like, okay, thank goodness I am done. I can put this aside. And it's one and a part of a series. I was not compelled to continue the series because I felt like I never got to know the characters. Being able to read through such a threadbare conflict for the promise that the premise had in terms of things did not match up to the level of what I wanted from the respective story. So I gave this 1 out of 5 stars. It's not a series that I'm going to come back to, and I thought it was underwhelming for what it chose to do. So for Bully I Hate by Gabrielle Melo, which is the first book in the Enemies to Lovers Club, I gave 1 out of 5 stars. It's not one that I would honestly recommend, unfortunately. It was disappointing to say the least. The next book I read was a much better book, and I am very, very happy that I had the opportunity to be able to read this. The next book that I read was A Love Song for Ricki Wilde by Tia Williams. I gave that 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this respective Black love romance with a bit of a magical realism element to it in terms of things. I'm not going to go into too much detail about where this book goes because I don't want to spoil the experience for anyone who wants to pick it up. But you're basically following the perspectives of two characters. One of them in the present day within Harlem, of a woman named Ricki Wilde, who is part of a very well-to-do Black family, and is struggling to kind of make her place in the world in terms of being able to own her own business and be on her own and things like that. All she wants to do, all Ricki really wants to do, is run a flower shop, and she finds her space to be able to do it, and is able to make the connections that she wants to make to be successful, including a connection with someone who used to be a former child star. And she tries to do everything that she can do to run a successful business with her respective flower shop. But she also meets a very interesting stranger in the perspective of things, like as she's running this flower shop, and she's intrigued by this stranger, which I'll get to in a little bit. But the long and short of things in terms of the other aspect of this is that Ricki has a fascination with the Harlem Renaissance, which kind of ties into the secondary story and the secondary person who is a part of this novel, which you follow, and his name is Ezra. And so Ezra's respective story is kind of like tied to Ricki's, and I'm not going to tell you how in terms of things, but it's a dual perspective novel in which you follow Ricki in the present day and you follow Ezra in the past. And Ezra is an up-and-coming musician and very passionate musician who is coming up during the time of the Harlem Renaissance. And you get the perspective that he has in terms of the relationships he has and things like that, and being able to like be tied to the environment of Manhattan and being able to see things through his perspective. The way that this book does the relationship between Ezra and Ricki was very, very well done, and I liked seeing the elements of their dynamic together in this respective work. It was done very, very well. I enjoyed being able to watch the dynamic between these characters and being able to get to know some of the side characters that are also presented within the work. I enjoyed it is kind of my thing, because I do like magical realistic realism type stories in contemporary fiction, and especially being able to see the Black love depicted between these two characters. I think this may be my favorite Tia Williams book so far. As far as like the books that I've picked up from her, I've also read A Perfect Find, as I mentioned on the channel before, and I've also read 7 Days in June, which I think 7 Days in June might be, if I had to rank them, I would say A Love Song for Ricki Wilde is my favorite, then followed by A Perfect Find, and then 7 Days in June. But I'll do a review on book, like all of Tia Williams's respective works in a comprehensive video to be able to highlight her work. But I think A Love Song for Ricki Wilde is my favorite just because I love the dynamic between Ezra and Ricki. I love being able to get to know these characters and being able to see them in these different environments and time periods, and being able to see the dynamic of how that went down. There are a few elements about it that prevented me from giving it a full 5 stars, probably because of the way it treats one of the characters in terms of being able to move that story forward. But if I were to talk about it in this video, it would be a major spoiler, so I'm not going to go into that. But it does depict quite a number of like difficult subject matters, like in the perspective of how these two end up together, and kind of like the transpiration of events in this respective novel. But I did enjoy the overarching journey and being able to see the dynamic between Ezra as well as Ricki, and I really enjoyed it. So I would give A Love Song for Ricki Wilde 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is the second book in the Skyland series by Kennedy Ryan. This Could Be Us. The very first book in the Skyland series was Before I Let Go, which I've talked about on the channel before. But to talk about This Could Be Us, this follows up with one of the other characters that was featured within Before I Let Go, named Soledad. And this particular book, This Could Be Us, focuses on Soledad's relationship. And to kind of give a perspective in terms of things, Soledad is living with her husband, who really does not treat her very well in terms of things. They share 3 kids together, and they are basically like trying to navigate a lot of different things. And there is a scandal that breaks that happens with Soledad's husband that completely kind of like has their family torn apart because of the sequence of events. And in terms of things, long story short, Soledad's husband is indicted in an investigation of fraud that is uncovered by Judah, who is the investigator for a company who uncovers Soledad's husband's fraud and defrauding of the respective company and owes them money. And Soledad blames Judah for breaking apart her family, and just has quite a bit of animosity in terms of the things that that caused this falling out, and eventually breaks up the relationship between Soledad and her husband. Her husband becomes her ex-husband. But Soledad also ends up finding that she has feelings for Judah as he's trying to help her navigate this process and this investigation against her ex-husband in terms of things. And I thought that the way that this respective novel handles a lot of these difficult issues and the dynamic of the family and things like that was done remarkably well. I actually enjoyed this This Could Be Us more than Before I Let Go, for the dynamic of the characters, for being able to see the respective chemistry between Judah and Soledad, and being able to connect with all the members of her family, and navigating all of these difficult processes, and then navigating the relationship itself, seeing that the dynamic in the relationship between them was done very, very well in a way that I thought really connected with me. So I really enjoyed This Could Be Us for what it offered. I think I gave This Could Be Us a total of 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I definitely enjoyed being able to see Soledad's story in the respective dynamic between her and Judah. I had all the feels of reading this book, and I think the cover is so beautiful. I did originally receive this book as a galley from NetGalley, and I also bought a copy of the book, and I also listened to it on audiobook. So I had 3 different versions of it that I could go between, and I was able to be able to finish it, and I enjoyed it so much. I'm glad to have it in my collection, and I'm glad to have had the opportunity to be able to read it, and I can't wait to read Kennedy Ryan's next book in this respective series. So This Could Be Us, the second in the Skyland series. 4.5 out of 5 stars. Apparently in the last several months, I've been on this kick of reading adult romances, especially those that are written by BIPOC authors, as well as focusing on Black love and different relationships and things like that. So to continue in that spectrum, I did read a number of shorter fiction romance reads that I did end up liking overall in terms of things, and I'm just going to go through them rather quickly, since overall they had different aspects of them that I either enjoyed or had things that were about just basically want to go through them rather quickly, since they were quick reads. First one was a book that an author in a book that was new to me called Homecoming Season, which is part of the Gampton Hills A&M University series. It's a novella by Aubree Pynn. I think I gave this one... This was originally written in 2021, and I gave this a total of 3 stars. This particular novella centers on a group of friends who are coming back for homecoming season from at a HBCU in terms of having the homecoming game and things like that, and it showcases a number of different characters, but it primarily focuses on the relationship between Tony and Maya, and I loved the audio narrators within this. It was Wesley Siobhan and Winston James, and they did a phenomenal job of narrating this particular novella. What I didn't really love about it was the way that it treated some very difficult subject matters in this respective book, and there is definitely trigger warnings for sexism as well as sexual harassment and rape for those who may be picking this up, because I know that maybe a trigger, like this particular book did not contain trigger warnings, and I think it definitely should have contained that to pick up this respective book, because I was not prepared. I was not as prepared as I thought I would be for the way that it treated certain things in this respective novel, for how difficult it was. I appreciated the dynamic between the friends and being able to see the friends reconvene, and the camaraderie between the friends in terms of coming back for a homecoming season. But I feel like for the overarching like central conflicts and developing the relationship between Amaya and Tony, especially how flawed Tony and Amaya are as characters in terms of things, I feel like that could have been done a bit better with a bit more sensitivity in terms of how difficult some of these topics are addressed in here, as well as the dynamic between them. But I thought that it was worth the read, but I think it could have done things better than what it did for the short amount of time that it took to tell the respective story of the relationship between Tony and Amaya, as well as other characters. I like the dynamics between the friends. I feel like the central conflict could have been handled with more sensitivity overall. So I gave this, because I enjoyed the audio narration, because I enjoyed the overarching journey that it took me on, 3 out of 5 stars, but I still think it could have been better. I think I am still going to probably try to see if I can read more from this author, to see if there are other narratives that click with me better, as well as other books that may be in this respective series that also might click with me better. So I'm definitely giving the author another shot in terms of things. I did like the camaraderie between the characters, in terms of the friends coming back for homecoming. So I do see a lot of things about this that really clicked with me. So I'm going to read more from the author, as well as read more into the series to see if there's if there are narratives that click with me better than this one did. So the next book that I read was the first book in a trilogy of novellas, which is called the Them Boys trilogy by Alexandria House. This is Set, which is the first book in that respective trilogy. I think I gave this either 3 or 3.5 stars. I want to say that it was probably 3.5 stars for me as an overarching experience, because I love the audiobook. I read this on audiobook, and it was narrated by Wesley Siobhan and Jacoby Dinniman, who did a phenomenal job of voicing the characters and the overarching story. So I definitely enjoyed this for the audiobook narration as well. The actual story is a very interesting dynamic of going between past and present, showcasing the relationship between Karima as well as Set. And Karima is an owner of a daycare who has a very messy life in terms of things. She has a daughter with a kid and an estranged ex who conveniently shows up at the wrong times in terms of things. And then she ends up reconnecting with a guy named Set, who is very alpha male, has a set of brothers, and they have a rough backstory in terms of the family dynamic that Set comes from, especially with their abusive father. So considering this is a story, an adult romance that is told between past and present, you see the dynamic of Set and Karima and where their relationship started and into the present day in terms of how their dynamic works. And I liked being able to see their history. I liked being able to see the dynamic between them and how they resolve certain challenges and things that happen in their respective relationships for this. I think where this, like, it's not that I had any problems technically with the story that was being told, but as a matter of preference, certain aspects of it was a bit too alpha male, like in the way that like Seth reacts to Karima and certain things just didn't sit well with me, but that's just my personal preference in terms of things. I did like the overarching story that it told. I did like the narration and being able to follow these characters for what it offered. And I don't know if some of the time jumps really were the best in terms of being able to transition from, like, you know, the past and the present because of how the story was told, like in terms of things. Like, that was another aspect that was a little awkward in some transitions, but overarching story was enjoyable for what it was. I'm curious to see where this respective series goes. So I did like this first book in the Them Boys series by Alexandria House. So this was set. First book in the Them Boys series, 3.5 out of 5 stars. Very, very steamy romance in terms of things. And it does deal with some of its heavier themes very well and showcases its characters in a way that's very vivid and like easy to be able to relate to the characters and being able to see their dynamic between each other. Though there were things for preference that just didn't click with me as much as I wanted them to, but I do plan on reading more in this respective series. So 3.5 out of 5 stars. And this one I thought was a novella, but it's actually not. This is a full-blown novel, but I did really enjoy this interracial age gap romance by this author. This is the first book that I read from this particular author, and I was excited to be able to pick it up. This is If She Says Yes by Tasha L. Harrison. This is the first book in the Say Yes duet. Now, first of all, age gap romances are usually not my cup of tea, like for preference in terms of things, but I really liked how this book showcase the relationship between Darcy and Tomas. Darcy is a 40-year-old woman who is basically like the mother to her son who is getting married, and like the bulk of this novel takes place over the weekend and the events planning up to the wedding of her son. And her son's best friend is a businessman trying to make things out, is the best man and also the best friend to her son, who has harbored a secret crush on Darcy for the longest time in terms of things. And you would think the dynamics of that would be problematic, to say the least, in terms of the best friend, the best friend of her son having a relationship with the mom in terms of things. But since they're both adults, the way that the conflict and the respective issues between and the dynamic between these two characters, between Darcy and Tomas, is done in a realistic way that I could watch unfold in the respective narration beats and the overarching story. And it convinced me in terms of the chemistry that they had between each other and being able to deal with some of the things that they have in this respective relationship. I was not expecting to enjoy it as much as I thought going in terms of things, and I ended up really enjoying the audiobook narration for it. I enjoyed the overarching story. I liked being able to see a dynamic between Darcy and Tomas and being able to get to know the characters and their relationship and their dynamics between each other. So I did enjoy the overarching narrative for If She Says Yes. I know there's a follow-up that I do want to be able to pick up for this respective story to see where it goes. It does end with an HEA, so I'm glad that I was able to pick up this self-contained story in terms of things, and then being able to see a point where it branches off into another part of this respective story where we follow Darcy and Tomas with their respective relationships. So I enjoyed it. I gave this book overall 4 out of 5 stars. It's my first read from Tasha L. Harrison, and I'm looking forward to reading the follow-up to If She Says Yes, the first book in the Say Yes duet by Tasha L. Harrison, 4 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I want to highlight is the only nonfiction book that I have read in the past several months. And I knew I wanted to pick this up for the longest time because I did get it as a galley from NetGalley. And it is very much, if you have heard the stories coming out of Southlake, Texas, in terms of the school system, and you've listened to NBC News podcast Southlake, chronicling some of the book bannings and things that have been going on there. This book is kind of like an overarching narrative that centers on that and expands upon it. So this is They Came for the Schools, One Town's Fight Over Race and Identity, and the New War for America's Classrooms by Mike Hixenbaugh. And I knew I wanted to pick this up considering the being able to see a lot of the dynamics of what has been happening in terms of book bannings, curriculum changes, things like that, and being able to see the overarching story of what's been happening with the ISD schools and in Southlake, and being able to see the expanded narrative on that from the perspective of Mike Hixenbaugh, who is one of the reporters who was breaking a lot of these these controversial things that have been going on in the school system, like extensively in terms of the fight that many families that are in that school district between bullying, racist bullying, harassment, and abuse towards the students that were in, who had called out and had asked for help in terms of being able to deal with a lot of those issues in that school system, and basically the falling out of a lot of things that went unaddressed with those respective issues in that school system. I found it to be a very challenging read to go through because a lot of it is, it does a great job of being able to present on the table multiple perspectives in terms of the different people who were a part of that experience, from students who were directly affected by the bullying and the harassment and the verbal abuse that they had put towards them. Between some of the people who were elected officials who kept getting hitting brick walls in terms of the resistance for calling out a lot of this this harassment and abuse within the system, and it being unaddressed and just going into a direction where it's just like, what is going on in terms of things, and then having being able to see that as a microcosm of a lot of the fights that are happening in schools and libraries and things like that across the United States. So it does a great job of being able to focus on this respective district, but also like seeing it as a mirror of a lot of events that have been happening over the past several years across the United States in terms of things with respect to issues talking about race, about gender identity, about sexual orientation, things like that, and how there has been resistance and book bannings and things like that in terms of being able to deal with the problems that have been coming across in terms of this one school district, mirroring a lot of the fights and the battles in terms of education across the nation. So I feel like this particular book did a wonderful job of being able to showcase those parallels, telling individual stories, highlighting the controversies and the issues and the things that have been going on. And I definitely found it a valuable read and a good companion to the Southlake podcast that was and it's narrated by the author himself, Mike Hixenbaugh, and I really enjoyed being able to learn more from this read. It was not always an enjoyable experience because of how difficult the subject matter is, but I'm glad that this book exists, and I really value the experience of being able to read it for myself. So that is They came for the schools. One town's fight over race and identity and the new war for America's classrooms by Mike Hixenbaugh. 5 out of 5 stars. Just wonderful read, and I would highly, highly recommend it. So now we come to the last 2 books that I'm going to highlight in this respective video, and they're both adult bully romances. One of them is I think both of them could be classified as new adult bully romances. I lied about saying that the previous book that I mentioned was the only 1-star read, because this next book took me several months to read, and it was only 60-something pages of a novella that I ended up not enjoying whatsoever at all. This is Breaking the Bully by Jessa Kane. It is considered a high school contemporary romance, bully romance, new adult. And the long and short of this is it does have a happily ever after, but it is very much, it's one that I felt it was unsatisfying to read from a character development standpoint, as well as making me believe in the relationship that was showcased in it. But the long story short is you have a dual perspective. You have the girl, a high school girl named Allie, who meets a guy, Moore, one rainy night as she's trying to escape her abusive father. There's a misunderstanding that happens between the characters during that rainy night in terms of things, which leads Moore to relentlessly bully Allie to the point where he disrupts her relationships. He makes her life like very miserable in terms of things, and you can tell how miserable Allie is in terms of things. And in the dual perspective between Allie and Moore, Allie is just trying to keep her head above water as much as she can between her father's abuse of her, as well as having to go to school and deal with Moore in terms of his shenanigans. And really the reason that Moore gives for him bullying her is that he likes her and she rejected him, and he really likes her, but he wants to keep her all to himself. And it's just, it's glorifying bullying in a way that I knew that this dynamic was not going to work for me. And it really trivializes the dynamic in terms of things. It's like, and I'm paraphrasing in terms of some of the dynamics that are here, but it's like, oh, I know that bullying her is bad and she deserves better, but oh, I really love her and I want her all to myself. That's why I treat her the way that I do. And then when they actually talk about the respective issue that's between them, it like Allie's like, you know, you treat me terrible, but I still want you, and hey, let's be together, let's have sex, what have you. And like, you know, they are intimate with each other, and then it's like, you know, oh, the misunderstanding is resolved, and you know, in terms of things, it's like it really just trivializes the issues that are within it in terms of stuff, and basically has this threadbare establishment of why the characters get together in terms of things, and it doesn't really treat the bullying aspect with the seriousness that it really deserves. And there is a resolution between for the dynamic of the book where Allie does get away from her abusive father and stuff like that, but it feels like Moore is the person that like saves her from that predicament, and then like she says she has to save herself in terms of things. And without going into spoilers in terms of how it ends, it does in happily ever after in terms of the characters reconvening later, but it just feels like I expected a lot more from this story than what it gave, and I was not satisfied with it at all once I finished it. So I would not come back to it, and I think it feels like it's one part of the type of dynamic between a lot of issues that I have with bully romances, in terms of it's saying it's wash, rinse, cycle, repeat of the guy bullies the girl as badly as he does because he really likes her, and she simply takes it and accepts it because she likes him, and it's not, their issues are not really vetted out in terms of things, nor is the bullying aspect really taken with the seriousness that it deserves. So I thought that this was 1 out of 5 stars. Didn't work for me. I wish it could have been a better experience, but it's not something that I would come back to. So that is Breaking the Bully by Jessa Kane. 1.5 5 stars. And the last book that I'm going to mention in this respective video was actually a reread. It is another bully romance. It is actually one of the first bully romances that I read many years ago, and I picked it up for a reread. Re-listened to it on audio book, and I pretty much feel the same way about it that I did when I read it many years ago. It is Bully by Penelope Douglas, and this is the cover up for your reference. I originally gave Bully by Penelope Douglas, which is the first book in the Fall Away series. I think I gave this 1 out of 5 stars, if I remember correctly. Either 1 or 1.5. Let me look and see. No, just 1 out of 5 stars. So I feel like Bully just was not a book that worked for me for many reasons. I like Penelope Douglas's writing. It is compulsively readable in terms of things. I will say that. I will say that as a positive for this respective book in terms of the fact that it's compulsively readable. It has clearly defined characters, and there's an establishment of the relationship between them in terms of Jarrett and Tate is the main female character in this book, and you follow her navigation of high school as her once childhood friend Jarrett becomes her tormentor in terms of things, and you can tell in the relationship between them that it is not on a good standing at all in terms of Jarrett makes Tate's living existence in terms of being able to navigate high school and stuff like that, like, just really unbearable, and you can feel that through the respective narration in terms of things. But it feels like when you take the different pieces of how the dynamic of their relationship is shown within this novel, it glorifies bullying. It glorifies the harassment and the abuse that Tate endures with Jarrett, because he's a hot body, because he's been the childhood friend, and even in certain moments where you can tell Tate is pushing back against Jarrett and like emotionally, like, you know, how heavy it feels with respect to her experiences with Jarrett and stuff like that. There are other aspects of it where it's like Jarrett really just does not respect Tate, and she makes a lot of allowances for that relationship to work in terms of things that just did not sit well with me when I read this respective novel. I really just, like, the very first time that I read this book, I really just did not like it at all. And rereading it so many years after the fact, like, I can give credit to where credit is due for the audiobook narration, because it does do a great job of being able to narrate from Tate's perspective, and I can actually see, like, you know, in terms of like how Tate feels like on the other end of Jarrett's bullying, and the reasons that are given for Jarrett's bullying in terms of what he does to her and some of the things that she goes through. It just feels like there are a lot of things about it that, like, just feel so excessive for the drama in terms of things, and it doesn't convince me that these two characters really are like that Jarrett really respects her. And it even got worse in the follow-up for Until You, in terms of like being told from Jarrett's perspective in terms of things. I just did not love, like, it's my villain origin story in terms of like how bully romances can drive you out the wall, for how, like, it glorifies, like, you know, the very real pain that people go through when they are being bullied and harassed and abused in this kind of environment, and the dynamic between them. It was a lot, like, it deals with a lot of serious subject matters, but it kind of feels like it trivializes them down for the sake of the dynamic of the relationship and the romance that is showcased in the book. And I did not like that aspect of that, even in the first time I read it, and then picking it up again, I didn't like that aspect of it, at least. I'm willing to give some concession in terms of things. I rated it 1 out of 5 stars the first time I read it, this time I can say that, like, because of the audiobook experience, I'll give allowances for it to be 1.5 out of 5 stars, but overall, I did not like this book. And I really feel like it's not that I don't think that bully romances can't be written in a way where it feels satisfying in terms of the dynamic between characters and showcasing them in a realistic way, but the way that it's done in this book, to me, did not work for me and didn't take bullying with this level of seriousness and the dynamics of how that happens in a way that feels realistic or valuable to me. And so I'm going to say for Bully, which is the first book in the Fall Away series by Penelope Douglas, my reread is 1.5 stars. My original rating was 1 star out of 5 stars. So I'll say that that's my update for now. I have not updated my Goodreads review of it quite yet, but I would say that most of my initial thoughts still remain the same when picking up this novel and re-experiencing it for the first time in a number of years. It just did not work for me overall. So that is it for all the books that I've read over the past several months, including one reread. I tried to streamline it as much as I possibly could for the sake of this respective video, because I know that this one is going to be long, and I know it's probably going to be long for me to edit, but I hope that gives you a perspective in terms of what I've been able to pick up over the past several months. And I'm hoping to be able to showcase some of the other books in a more timely manner for June, in terms of what I want to put on my TBR and what I want to be able to get through, since I now have the time to be able to do it, and then not just read, but also give my thoughts about it in terms of videos on the channel and things like that, as well as doing maybe some reading vlogs in between, in terms of being able to pick up some of the galleys that I have, as well as the books that I've been able to pick up. So that is it. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell to be informed of when I post new videos. Thank you again for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next video.